And lo, it was the time of year where travellers from Suffolk descended on Wycombe. Weary from avoiding roadworks and rail strikes, they approach a Wycombe steward. We are tired from our journey, they say. Can we stop here? No, he said with a troubled expression. We have no room in the car park. This is the Blue Monday podcast. Hello and welcome to the Blue Monday podcast, discussing Ipswich Town up or down since 2015. I'm Rich Woodard, and this is the Prematch show brought to you in partnership with our friends at the Greyhound Pub in Ipswich. We're available every week on YouTube video and podcast audio, and tonight we are live, so we want to hear from you in the chat. Joining us tonight, after Seb Brown failed a late fitness test, but we're glad to have him nevertheless, Joe Fairs. Joe, how are you? Did you enjoy my Christmas nativity intro there that was definitely not written 2 minutes before we started?
I have been to 2 nativity plays this week already, and that was
wow.
And you've been up against a 4-year-old and a 6-year-old, but I think that's probably the weakest one I've heard of the three.
Any opportunity I can have to have a dig at Wycombe's parking situation, I will. But yeah, good luck. I mean, if you're listening to this before traveling down to the game, do leave early if you haven't got arrangements sorted for parking, because it is a bitch. So there you go. I said we are live, so we want to hear from you guys. Let's jump into the chat right now and see who's there. Lee, evening to you. FBL Tractor, good evening to you. Good evening to Michael in Brisbane. Evening to Luke. First time I've caught it live, long time watcher. Luke, great to have you with us. Oh, there's questions about the weather in Brisbane. We're not indulging that chat. Evening to Gary. Evening to Mullet. Watch your lads. Cold one again in it. Yeah. Dan, evening to Dan, who I think has informed a little bit of our research as well. So feel free to correct us, Dan, if we deviate off course a little bit. Only the 22 degrees for Michael in Brisbane. There we go. Evening to Sully, the A team, he says, and evening to Eric. Good to have you with us. We will be chatting Wycombe. We will also predict the League One round of games, which are slowly disappearing away due to the weather. But first off, Joe, apart from giving us more into your week that's just been, apart from your nativities, it's a year of Kieran McKenna. We did a show about him quite recently, didn't we? But a good milestone. But we'll be hoping for another year of the same kind of stuff, won't we?
Yeah, I actually listened back to the pod that we recorded when the appointment was made live during the pod this time last year, and it was interesting because it was talk of he's probably not the manager to come in and pick up 2 points a game to get us up this season. We're obviously not going for promotion this season, because if we were, we'd be going for a sort of Neil Warnock type. And obviously he did come in, basically pick up 2 points a game. It didn't get us anywhere near the top six. So whether it showed that we were right, I think everyone knows we were right anyway, but to go for the approach of somebody to sort of get us on an even keel rather than try and attempt what in hindsight and maybe felt like at the time was a hopeless attempt at promotion. There was no way we could have gotten that top six really last year. And I think McKenna's, we talked to him having a low floor and a high ceiling, and I think he's really starting to push at that ceiling already, isn't he? And it's been a great year, hopefully another year of progress, and this time next year we're sort of looking upwards in the Championship as opposed to sort of just bashing our head against the top of League One.
That would be nice, wouldn't it? Yeah. Plenty of stuff out there with about Kieran McKenna. We did a show, Joe and I, live Q&A a few weeks back, maybe last week actually, to mark 50 games. That's worth a listen. We linked the show that Joe mentioned, which featured a very brief and regretful Northern Irish accent from me, very briefly, which I feel like I feel a pressure since Paul Cook to have to do it, and I really didn't think that one through, because that is what you get when you go live. So but definitely recommend watching that one back. And yeah, if you've got any thoughts in the comments about the year that's just been under McKenna, overwhelmingly positive, but I'm sure all of us accept we've not done anything yet, and so would he as well. I'm sure be the first to say that. So we'll be looking forward to what 2023 has to offer. In terms of other bits and pieces of news, ITFC Women round out the calendar year of fixtures for them with an away trip to Cheltenham. Cheltenham promoted as champions of Division 1 South West last season. Currently 6th, having won 4, drawn 1 and lost 3 with a -6 goal difference. They beat Cambridge last time out in the FA Women's National League Plate. ITFC will be in buoyant mood in the fourth round victors last time out against Portishead and Lewis or London Bees. Is it London Bees or Crawley Wasps? I always get those two mixed up. Likely Lewis anyway, isn't it? In the next round. So positivity there.
It's an away game, isn't that, Rich, as well?
Home game.
Oh, was it home games here?
Yeah,
that's a good draw then, isn't it?
In January. And more positive news in the player of the season for last year, Kyra Robertson's back from injury in midfield, and the squad that had been a little bit depleted is starting to get back into really positive shape. And 12 p.m. kickoff there. Details of the venue on the Twitter as well. So we wish them all the very best and look forward to a positive 2023 for those guys as well. Gary, we need to say thank you to you on the super chat. Very generous of you. I'm not sure my intro merited that, so it's purely, presumably, for Joe's presence and wisdom here. But Gary, thank you so much. If you want to do likewise and you're watching on YouTube, click the super chat button. But otherwise, we just appreciate folk who give us a thumbs up on the video and a review in the podcast app of choice, and subscribe if you haven't done already. Get this kind of quality. I mean, we're always butting up against the level of quality, but that intro, I feel really bad about that. I told Joe it was going to go one way or the other, and I kind of feel like I've let everyone down. But hey ho,
I'm sure some people enjoyed it.
Yeah, if you enjoyed it, let me know. I feel like I need a little bit of an ego boost. Even to Chris, looking forward to my first visit to Wycombe. The car parking sounds fun. Got a space on the nearby school. Hopefully not as bad as the stadium car park. Yeah, if you want to get home, Chris, on Saturday, then the stadium car park is not where you want to. Or
if anyone's not been there, if anyone's not been there before, basically it's an industrial estate, but it's like a one-road industrial estate with stuff at either side of it, and the ground is at the very end of it. So obviously everyone goes into the industrial estate and parks on sort of either side because all the units down there rent out parking. But then like I say, it goes up and up and up, and then you get to the stadium right at the top of the hill. And then when you come out of the stadium, all these car parks are letting back to one single road with a tough exit at the bottom back onto the main road. So you can be there a very, very long time. And last time,
Oxford, it's similar to Oxford, isn't it?
Yeah, but I'd say it's even worse than Oxford.
Worse than Oxford, yeah. But similar kind of experience if you park on that retail park.
Yeah. And last time, like I said, we were there, I remember turning up and everyone sort of meeting every Ipswich fan with the same shock that Paul Lambert signed a new 5-year contract, which I think runs for another 18 months.
Yeah, well, I enjoyed your tweet from earlier, Joe, talking about, I hope that's a tradition when new managers get new contracts on the eve of an away trip to Wycombe. So we can but hope. But yeah, my experience of Wycombe away, which informed the introduction. Let's get it out there. Therapy for me, some 3 or 4 years on. I forget what it is. I arrived at 2:00 and ran out of on-street parking, and I ended up parking up at 2:45, some 1.5 miles, 2 miles away from the stadium. First time I've ever missed kickoff, I think, off the top of my head. I was not happy. There was literally nothing that I could find. So if you haven't got arrangements sorted out and you are listening to this, take this as your signal to get there ASAP and try and find on-street
parking space or one of those sites.
Yeah, well, I don't think there's anything in there either. It's an absolute nightmare. And Wycombe's weirdly really hilly as well. I don't know why I'd ever thought it's otherwise, but really hilly, really windy, hilly roads. But good luck to folk who haven't sorted themselves out just yet. We will talk about football at some point. Evening to FBL Track, to listen to the pod from a year ago. Interesting comparison with Burley. Feels like slow build, coach, the kind of beginning of their powers kind of thing as well. So yeah, that doesn't surprise me that we made that analogy. Lee, this time next year, Rodney will be challenging for the playoffs in the Championship. There you go. London Bees confirms FBL Tracks are in the FA Cup, but I suspect it'll be Lewis, given they're in the Championship. But thank you confirming that. Nick, yeah, evening. All games being called off. Yeah, we'll keep an eye on that one. Wycombe are fully confident, Joe, that the game will go ahead.
Well, they do have underfloor heating, don't they? There was a case a few years ago where sort of the game was called off 20 minutes before kickoff because they realised they'd forgot to turn it on. So hopefully, I'd imagine their smart meters have been running up a big bill this week, so they know that heating is on.
Mullet, yeah, I've only let myself down. I mean, we may as well pin that one, Mullet. That's a constant, isn't it? Yeah, Michael, with a fair point. I think we did try and talk about this a few weeks back. Should also remember that Cook's on a lot of the good players. Just couldn't make them into a team. I think that's fair enough, isn't it? And FPL Tractor logistic. I love how the logistics are dominating so far. Nowhere near the train station either. Chris, I'll take getting stuck for hours in exchange for 3 points. Wow, bless you, Chris, for taking one for the team. We hope that you get that. That's what we want.
I'll show solidarity, and I'll also take you getting stuck in traffic for hours, Chris.
There you go. Good stuff. Yeah, interesting, Gary. I'm just reading your comment out. We might come back to that one. Let's talk about Wycombe, Joe. Let's get on to the business of the pod. Currently 9th in the league, 29 points. That's 8 wins, 5 draws, 8 losses. Slow start to the season, isn't it? And maybe a surprise after their exploits last season in the playoffs.
Yeah, but I think, well, like I said, they'd obviously gone up the year before, come down into the championship, and managed to sort of sneak in to the playoffs right at the end of the season. But it's one of those ones, yeah, they nipped ahead of Plymouth, who ended the season badly. But when you say sneaking in, they snuck in with like 81 points. It wasn't like they snuck in with 72 points. They had a really good season and were good all through the season. And sort of for 3 years, really, they've been a good side, at least 3 years. But it's, I don't know, they started the season really poorly. They were almost sort of down in the relegation zone after 10 or 11 games, weren't they? Only had a couple of wins in the first 10 games, but they've sort of seemed to have got into their stride now. They lost a couple of big players. They lost, obviously, David Stockdale, who went to Sheffield Wednesday, had been their sort of their keeper last year, and had a brilliant season for them, obviously, as evidenced by the move to Sheffield Wednesday. They lost the big defender at the back, Anthony Stewart. Sort of a few others here and there. A couple of the loan players went back, and it's just taken them a while to get going now. But they do seem to be going, but they're still not really pulling up any trees, are they? Then they're not scoring a lot of goals still, which is something there that I think they went to Lincoln last week, barely had a shot on goal, and drew 0-0 there. And they're just, but as we know, we've played this Gareth Ainsworth side before. They are a very, very awkward side to play against. They will ask us questions that not many other teams in this league will ask us. And that isn't to say we won't be able to answer those questions, but it will be a very, very different game to any we've had so far this season, apart from, well, no, probably any game we've had this season.
Yeah, there's definitely a physical challenge there, which we'll drill into a little bit more. Worth just reiterating some of the points that you've made there. Yeah, 3 wins from the opening 11 wasn't particularly strong, and 9th in the 6-game form table, 2 wins, 3 draws, 1 defeat. You mentioned a draw away at Lincoln last time out, 0-0 with the 1 shot on target. 2-0 win over Pompey the game before. Positive there, but home form not the best. 15 points from 10 games is the 14th best home record in the league. Only 3 home clean sheets, including that one against Portsmouth. But they have scored in all but one of their home league games, and the only time they didn't score was when Plymouth came and beat them 1-0. And yeah, I'm sure other teams will have fared similarly against Plymouth, won't they? At least the Plymouth before the last few weeks. Last season, we talked about finishing 6th with 83 points and defeat in the playoff final to Sunderland. No real surprise there. And last season, Joe, 2 ITFC wins in the fixtures, which maintained our unbeaten record in our entire history against Wycombe. And don't read into that, guys. But yeah, a memorable game at Wycombe last season, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was the 4-1 win on a Tuesday night there when we were seemingly unbeatable in our white kit there. It's probably Paul Cook's finest moment as Ipswich manager. That game there, Bertrand Selena scoring a couple, including one where he sort of ran the length of the pitch into an empty net after beating David Stockdale to the ball, and Mick Mills with a memorable bit of commentating. But again, it was one of those games where we got the 4-1 result. We played really well, but there was still the moments where Christian Walton had to pull out a massive save from a corner, didn't need to keep it at. I think that would have made it 3-2 at that point. And if they'd have got that goal back, things could have gone sort of south quickly. But they are a side that will always have their moments because they play such an awkward. The game is so broken down. There's no flow to any game. It's very much just ball is off the pitch, ball is back on the pitch, ball is off the pitch, ball is bombed down to our end of the pitch and try and there's no flow, there's no rhythm to the game. It's very stop-start, just a very, very awkward style to play against.
Yeah, and it did feel like the first half was going to go away from us as well, and the game really pivoted in quite a significant way around that Hayden Coulson injury with Burgess coming on strangely. But yeah, it was an enjoyable watch for a rare occasion under Paul Cook, and then the reverse game of Bournemouth Road was McKenna's first game in charge. You remember much about that one? Kind of a defensive showing there, really, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was the first we'd seen of McKenna, and sort of James Norwood and Macaulay Bonne played as a front two, didn't they? But James Norwood was almost playing as like a left winger, so he was having to get up and down the pitch. But it was Norwood who came across and managed to bundle home a goal from what was Macaulay Bonne's cross, I think it was at the time, or cross shot that the keeper had palmed, something along those lines, wasn't it? But it was a really interesting. I think McKenna got lucky in some respects that when he came in, the Gillingham game on Boxing Day was cancelled, so it gave him a good week to work with the players after the Sunderland game, and you could tell we already had a plan from sort of day one, and yeah, it worked well. That plan didn't end up being a plan through the whole season, or certainly not into this one, but it was one of those ones where a good win. I think there was Václav Hladký, probably his last league game for the club, wasn't it? Because Walton had COVID, didn't he?
Yeah.
Like me, I was at home with COVID, and Christian Walton had COVID, and Hladký came in, and it's probably the toughest game you'd expect him to come in for when you're getting bombarded with balls into the box, and he'd been a keeper that struggled under that. But no, we defended well. He played well in goal, and we got a deserved clean sheet.
Yeah. Let's go back to the chat very briefly to see what focus are now. Wycombe improving, says FPL Tractor. Dan mentioning Ainsworth upbeat that getting a lot of his players back from injury, and Josh Scowen was a miss for a big chunk of the start of the season, and his resurgence back into the team has certainly helped them steady the ship. Michael, sympathy for us. For those in traffic while he's watching his sofa, we've got a bit of chat about Luke Wolfen, and we'll come back to that one. Luke, losing Akinfenwa, big for the dressing room, it seems, watching some of Tafazoli's YouTube channel, I think it was. Yeah, big character, Joe, wasn't he? Akinfenwa didn't play a huge amount of minutes for them, but a presence and, someone that is going to make the dressing room a buoyant place to be, shall we say.
Yeah, and also his contributions on the pitch, while they were few and far between in regards to actual amount of minutes, but him coming off the last 10, 15 minutes in games, he still won every header that went near him. Still nobody could get round him, and it still made games difficult, him being on the other side. And it's not, like I say, it's not just that side of it, as Luke mentions there, being in the dressing room is key, and he's obviously a massive character, keeps things going there. And they've lost three big characters in Stewart, Stockdale, and Akinfenwa.
A bit of chat about Ainsworth as well. Long hair, leather jacket. What's not to like about Ainsworth? And Lee, I wonder if Ainsworth will have his chest out in this weather, maybe under a big trench coat, perhaps. But let's talk about the boss, Joe, in charge since September 2012, Songwit's second longest serving manager in the 92. The first is Simon Weaver at Harrogate, but they've been mostly non-league for a big chunk of that.
The last 2 seasons, isn't it? Yeah, that he's been in the actual league.
But 500 over the 500 games, managed 202 wins, 1.44 points per game, and has been linked tentatively with a few championship clubs, including his ex QPR as a player, wasn't he?
Yeah.
But I think possibly, maybe, and I was guilty of this as well, maybe underestimated in terms of his reading of the game and his tactics, because we know that they're quite direct and physical, but he's a good tactical manager, isn't he, Gareth Ainsworth, and nearly kept them up in the championship.
You don't get 500 games under your belt as a manager, especially at the same club, without having something about you. You see what the average shelf life is for a manager these days, and it's barely a year in the Football League now. And like I say, you can say he plays simple football, but he's never been in a position where he's got a decent sized budget in the league. Even when Wycombe have got out of this league, that I think they were almost favourites for relegation at the start of the season. Their budget probably said that, and they've gone up to the Championship, would have had a budget a fraction of the size of anyone's in that. And even back in this league, they're still going to be a small budgeted team. But football management is about getting the best out of what you've got, and he's certainly done that for a number of years. So yeah, no, he's a good manager. Yeah, like I said, QPR was linked with, I think Blackburn. He was linked with where I think he may have been as a kid at Blackburn, or sort of certainly up that way because he played for Preston as well. But no, he's a very good manager, and he's, like I say, he's one that you give him an inch and he'll take it and go from there.
Is it fair to say maybe in terms of a plan B or evolving the playing style. He's maybe not done that too much. According to our research, or Seb's research, we need to give Seb a shout out. Failed the fitness test, but did a lot of work. It's generally the 4-2-3-1 and generally the kind of same approach that he's taken. Is that fair, or am I being harsh?
No, I think it's fair, because when you look at the numbers, I know on the Opta sort of analyst website, they have all the numbers there, really detailed stuff, really good stuff for League One, and it talks about something like PPDA, which is passes per defensive action, which basically means how much you press, and they're sort of third or fourth in the pressing table, or I think the seventh actually in that, and we're fourth, so they press more than anyone. But then when you look at on the ball sequence time, passes, speed that they go forward with the ball, the amount of 10 plus moves, the amount of build-up attacks they have, they're sort of bottom or second bottom in nearly every category there, where we're top or second top in every category. So you can look at that and you know what you're going to get. You're going to get them knocking the ball quickly, forwards quickly. When they get the ball, they're going to knock it forwards quickly. When we have the ball, they're going to try and press the life out of us and try and win the ball up high, get a high turnover on the ball and try and make something happen from there. And other than that, that's their sort of two main tactics. It's just when you get the ball, get up. They want the ball. They want the game to take place in our third of the pitch, and it's just about, for them, it's just about getting the ball in there, and once it's in there, keeping the ball in there. And our challenge, because how we like to play, is going to be to play through that press and keep the ball away from them and sort of keep our shape, and like I say, try and play through that press when it's there, and when we've got through that, we should have space to work with if they press as aggressive as they do elsewhere. But it's just being careful to make sure that we can play through that press, because it's not going to be easy, as many other teams have found. And
it's a squad built entirely to deliver on that kind of functional, it's kind of efficient style, isn't it? There's no mucking around. There's no patient build up, as you say. Looking through the squad, the majority of them are 6 foot plus. But they've been around at Wycombe for a while. A lot of homegrown talent there. I guess, should we talk about some of the key players or the players to watch out? I mean, there's an obvious one who's got 8 goals and 2 assists in his 21 appearances. Do you want to talk through Mehmeti?
Yeah, ex-Norwich, isn't he, I think, as well, because I think a couple of people have linked him with us, but I guess we've already signed one ex-Norwich player earlier this year in Ghassan Ahadme. But no, he's just a tricky player, plays off that sort of left-hand side or as a 10. And again, just a player that likes to press, likes to get on the ball, and he's someone that he's basically their main creative spark to making things happen. And when you look back at his goals, there's some really good goals in there. So it's just a case you do not want him to have the ball in your final third, because he's got all the ability to make things happen.
Lovely goal against Portsmouth. Definitely ping one from the edge of the area as well. Any other names catch your eye?
Well, Sam Vokes is still a good player, isn't he? On that, I think a couple of times he's played almost as a wide forward out there, but he is somebody that when the ball goes up there, he's going to win his fair share of headers and bring them up the pitch and work from there. I've always liked Josh Gowan, who's missed a lot of this season. He's always been a good player when I've seen him at QPR previously. They're sort of the main ones that stick out for me.
You can still find Vokes, 33 now, but I mean, still giving all of us hope. Gareth McCleary at 35, 4 goals, 4 assists, right-hand side, still doing the business for them as well. He's got to give him praise. He's looked after himself well, hasn't he? And certainly suits their way of playing, doesn't he?
He does, and he always continues to do so, doesn't he? But so they've got players they've got players that have been in there and know exactly what Gareth Ainsworth wants from them. That the main sort of core of their squad generally has remained in place. Their keeper that they've signed in the summer has really settled in quickly there. I think he's come down from Scotland, hasn't he? And
Livingston,
done really well down there.
And everything kind of to me is built from, the central midfield is really solid. Actually, you've got Lewis Wing and Josh Scowen. We mentioned really combative central midfield there. Likes to, both of them will get around, as you mentioned, and then Alfie Mawson's in there. One-time multi-million-pound signing for Fulham. He had some real struggles, but he's finding his way back into the game there, and he's still only 28.
He was in an England squad, wasn't he? Not that long ago, probably 4 years ago. He's probably in the England squad.
Tafazoli is a 6'4" centre back. He's for those of you who like YouTube, he's got quite an interesting channel. I remember him doing a video of the 4-1 game that we just talked about. And interesting watching his preparation. And I don't know if he's mic'd up or his mate's got a kind of a touchline mic, but they kind of film the game from his perspective, and really interesting watching that. And he's solid, but he missed the start of the season as well. It's no surprise that a lot of the star performance from last season were missing from the start of the season, and that might have been a factor in some of the form. And then, players like David Wheeler, Jordan DeBeater, Nick Freeman, Jack Grimmer, all have been around Wycombe for a while, all solid members of this squad. It's as you say, it's a really functional unit, isn't it, Joe? Go on. Sorry.
Yeah, but it does feel like it's a squad that's maybe getting to the end of its shelf life when you look at the ages of a McCleary and players like that. It hasn't really refreshed itself, and it does feel like if this is their final year before it needs a big overhaul. And maybe that was why Ainsworth was looking around a bit more in sort of previous windows for another job, because he knows he's sort of getting to the end of the cycle with these players, and it's going to be very difficult to go again because people are going to be coming in. If Wycombe are a top League One club now, which they sort of have become, the players are going to want the money to go alongside that, and it's just harder. It's harder to build that squad the second time round, isn't it? Or probably the fifth time round for him, to be fair.
Third oldest squad, Joe, in the league according to Seb Stats. So that really tells the story. Let's drill into some of let's try and use some stats to tell the stories as well. Your chat about I've even PPDA. Do you want to remind us what PPDA stands for?
Yeah, I mentioned it briefly earlier, but that passes per defensive action. So it's just how many times you allow the opposition to pass before you try a tackle, an interception, a block, or one of those. But they just do not let you have the ball in that final third. But then once that press is broken down, it's a case of just getting themselves sitting back into shape and waiting for them to get the ball back so they can hoof it long again in reality. Yeah,
well, 20th for possession stats overall, and 17th highest possession at home, 49.7%. 24th for pass completion overall, 21st for pass completion at home, 63.1%. 9th for accurate long balls at home, probably doesn't surprise anyone. We've mentioned the sequencing and direct speed and passes per sequence and build-ups and so on. The possession is functional rather than to try to create patterns of players. And
they're not a side for the purists, are they? It's for people that want to watch a good footballing side. You're not going to get it there. But I say it's not a criticism. It's just something that
it's a club trying to succeed.
They found something that works for them, and
the budget.
Stoke did it. Like I say, Stoke did it in the Premier League for all those years and finished 8th in the league a few times. And like I say, there's more than one way to skin a cat, and they do. I do find some of their gamesmanship tiring to watch, though. So we
didn't find stats of how often the ball's in play in their games.
Very, very low. I think there was a game where they played Accrington last year where the ball was in play for about 34 minutes or something along those lines.
No, it's
a real clash of styles in that side, because it's a clash of styles on the pitch with regards to every metric you can find, but also when you see us, when we get a throw in, when we get a corner, when we get a throw in, it's all trying to take things very quickly. So we'll be trying to speed the game up as much as we can, and they'll be trying to slow the game down as much as they can. So it's going to be a real clash of styles. It just means we've got to be very, very careful with our possession. You can't do those sort of too many of those overhit balls or bad passes where the ball goes out of play just to give them a breather. We've got to be really on it tomorrow.
Yeah, we'll talk about us shortly and how we might deal with the way they try and impose themselves on us. In terms of the attacking stats, they kind of just tell the similar story. 9th for XG, so they're kind of performing in the league as where their XG you would have them. 9th overall for shots per game, slightly higher at home. 4th, where they have 16.2 shots per game. 5 to 6 of those are on target, which is pretty good going as well. So they will try their luck from range. They will get shots away, but they are not going to run the ball at us. 24th for dribbles per game at home, 3.4, pretty low there. So it's not going to come. There's not players who are going to dribble at us and run our fullbacks, put it that way. More of an aerial bombardment perhaps. But one surprising stat for me, and I looked back on this, you'd kind of expect, Joe, that for the style of play that Ainsworth has got them set up with, they don't score too many set-piece goals. Only 2 set-piece goals scored at home, which is the 16th best in the league, and only 22% of their goals last season came from set pieces. Is that a surprise to you?
Yeah, it's just a massive anomaly, isn't it, for how they play? But I think it's more because while they do have some bigger players up front, there's also a lot of little tricky players almost, where it's like you've got this sort of kingpin to work off, and the Mamettis and sort of McCleary's, people like that are still quick, are still tricky, are still technical players. But it's a case of trying to get the ball to land in their, trying to get them to land on the ball in dangerous areas, isn't it? Rather than having so many sort of set piece monsters. You look at Lewis Wing and Josh Scowen in the midfield. Yeah, combative, but they're not big midfielders, are they? They're not guys you expect to score a lot of set piece goals. So it's really just their centre backs. But you would think it's a fairly obvious area for them to try and improve on, but they obviously don't have the quality of takers. But I'd say hopefully the poor record lasts until at least after tomorrow.
And worth noting, flipping the stats around, they've got the 11th best home defensive record in the league, but have conceded the majority of their goals, only by a little bit, from set pieces. So we know that Leif Davis is a threat. So that will be a big opportunity for us to win those set pieces, and for Leif Davis and Luke Wolford, and if he's fit, we'll come back to that one and all the speculation in the chat. That will be an opportunity for us, won't it? And other stats to look out for: 17th for home expected goals against. So that tells you the story about why they're not really got their season up and running, because they are conceding those chances. They concede the third most shots per game overall in the league, 7th most shots per game at home, about 12 per game, which is not great. But they will win the aerial duels. That's something we're not particularly great at. So that's first overall, first time for aerial duels won, about 30 a game, Joe.
Well, that's it. Yeah, they have more to compete into the numbers, isn't it? But it's just every sort of stat you look at. Obviously, the stats can tell you what their style of play is, but the main stats you look at for the things that sort of exclude their style of play just shows them to be a sort of a mid-table side, doesn't it? With regards to creating chances, stopping the opposition getting chances, quality of chances. They're sort of a mid-table side, and we're the best side in the league at that. So when you look at it on paper, it's like every game in this league. It's one we should be looking to win, but it's gonna pose its own challenges, and it's not going to be easy. Far from it. You're going to have to earn any victory you get at Adams Park. So hopefully we can. But you look at everything, and there's a reason why the bookies have Wycombe at sort of more than 3-1 to win at home.
Yep. Final stat from me before we'll pause. We'll come back and talk about us. So get your thoughts in the chat and start thinking about your predictions as well. We will come to that as well. This one was a good one from Seb. 18 of their 27 league goals have come in the first half of games this season. So 67% of their goals scored in the first half. They are third in the first half league table. If you pause games at 45 minutes, they'd be third in the league. Based on the second half, they'd be 20th or 18th at home. So they're definitely, if we get it to if it's 0-0 at half time, that bodes well for us. Or even if we get the first goal, Wycombe have only taken 3 points after falling behind in matches this season. So definitely an onus on us to start the game positively, which we've done of late, Joe, haven't we?
Yeah, we've probably sort of scored the most first half goals in the league, I'd guess, because we are the top scorers in the league, and we do score a lot of early goals. It's just we tend to do better when we score a little bit later, don't we? It seems a lot of the early goals we score, we tend to not get the second one in those games. But I'd say we've got on paper, we've got everything we need to beat Wycombe. It's just a case of going out there and earning that right to do on the pitch.
Yep. We'll be back after this.
Innovation Labs is business hub and co-working space with strategic locations across Suffolk. Our aim is to foster innovation, entrepreneurship, business growth, and the development of an AI centre of excellence in Suffolk. Monthly hot desks are available from just £79. For more info, head to innovationlabsgroup.com or contact info@innovationlabsgroup.com. Innovation Labs, providing support for businesses across Suffolk. Locations in Stowmarket, Ipswich, Sudbury, Woodbridge, with more to follow.
Thanks, Mikey. We good to have Mikey back in this country after the World Cup. He's been away for a while, so always like hearing his voice. Evening to Ian, our resident favourite Darlington FC fan. Still top of the league, not bad for a part-time fan-owned club. There you go.
Good to be top of the league, isn't it, Ian?
Yeah, all the cool kids are. And a lot of love for Darlington. Love a Parmo in Darlow. There you go. I'm getting some cuisine debate going on in the chat as well. Let's talk about us, Joe. A lot of discussion about what we should do. Luke Jackson won't have much space in behind, so I will go with Ladapo, also to help with defensive set pieces. Your thoughts on that one? Kind of one of the debates, isn't it? Jackson or Ladapo? But I thought Jackson was decent against Posh. Is there not against an old, slow back line? Is there not an opportunity for Jackson tomorrow?
I wonder whether Jackson drops into one of the number 10 roles there rather than sort of a Luco, maybe. Because is it a game for Sonny Aluko where it's sort of going to be flying over his head a lot of the game, or do you want to sort of position Jackson one of the wide roles and have Ladapo through the middle to, like you say, to give us that extra bit in defence as well from the set pieces? But I think we haven't got many options there, but there are a couple of little options there. But I'd expect to see Ladapo come back into the team.
Yeah, and Luke says bring Jackson on 60-ish minutes, depending on how the game is going. Once hopefully gaps open and defenders tire, that seems pretty fair enough. FBL going a little bit out there, Joe. A day for 3 big centre backs. I don't know if that's a question about us, or I assume it's about Ipswich. But yeah, do we want to address lots of rumours about Wolfie? Do we want to go there? I guess we don't know. That is the honest answer there. Hopefully he's fit, but if he's not, it will likely be Edmondson, won't it? And it'll be the usual suspects alongside him.
Well, I guess it's a choice between Edmondson or Keogh, isn't it? Last week, Keogh was on the bench and Edmondson wasn't. I don't know whether Edmondson was 19th man, but when you see the Town in 5 videos that they release, Edmondson's shirt was hanging up in the changing room. So was he a late injury or was he just a 19th man and Keogh was selected ahead of them? So we don't really know on that one, but like I said, there's obviously been a lot of talk about Wolfie, but if he's not going to be fit, there's going to be the choice there. Is Janoy Donashian going to be fit again? Because he's obviously struggled, and he went off early, didn't he, last week? And Kane Vincent Young came on. Kane Vincent Young actually started the 4-1 there last year. I think it's important to remember it's not just going to be, whilst they do play long ball, one of the main areas they do is the pressing of our centre backs. So we've got to make sure that pressing of our defenders. We've got to make sure that our defenders can play through that press and are brave on the ball and are good on the ball, because that's where we're going to win the game, by being able to beat that press.
Michael says lots of nervy moments in the game for fans. Town playing the triangle passes out from the back to make space in the middle of the park. He says Dave Raluco. I mean, maybe alongside Morsey. Is it a game for Humphreys?
Well, I don't think Aluko could play that role like Humphreys does, to be fair.
Okay.
I just think it's not his game. He's never really played that deep, and this isn't where you're going to work him in there. But yeah, I do get the point about him being able to drop in and try and help us play through there. Maybe it's not a game for Connor Chaplin, but then he scored a couple of goals last week, and maybe you'd go with Aluko and Jackson, isn't it? But who knows? But we're sort of starting to get options again. Great news that Marcus Harness is back in training as well.
Lee Evans on the grass in Seb's absence. Someone has to say it. Luke Hadma, one of the only players to worry our centre backs to worry our centre backs physically from memory.
I think that was the Burton game, wasn't it, where he gave them a real tough time. So
yeah, he's probably not in the start, but he's a good bench option, isn't he?
Well, it's funny because Luke Wolfenden is always very good at just looking after these big guys, but that Burton game, we were all over the place. We really struggled in that, and Hadme was really good in that one, but unfortunately he got injured and we haven't seen that elsewhere. But I don't think we need to worry about worrying their centre backs. We just need to make sure we can play our game and beat their game, which is playing through them.
And to that point, Eric noticed against Peterborough that Walton went direct more than other games that in this season. Is that something that we're likely to see, or should we be short distribution and playing football against Wycombe?
It's been quite a few games, isn't it, where Walton's gone quite direct. I don't think it's purely the Posh one, but yeah, you've got to do that. You can't just keep trying to play for a press if you're failing. You've got to mix it up a bit to keep them honest as well. If they know you're going to play it short every time, they can cheat a bit and push right up on you. So you just got to be able to mix it up both ways.
Dan Connor's always useful to have Dan's expertise here. Open play XGA, expected goals against, 17th. Open play goals against 7th. So they are clearly, I think that's Dan saying, Joe.
They're getting lucky. Yeah.
They're getting lucky. They should be conceding more goals, essentially. Yeah. Mark, eating to Mark, is the Elmes recall still on the cards with Evans back soon?
Well, we still need somebody to replace Dominic Ball, don't we? So there's still a gap in the squad because we still wanted 5 central midfielders, and I think the fact we've had 3 of them out for a significant period of time with Kamara, Ball, and Evans all out together, we need at least one in there. Is it going to be just the one? Is it going to be El Mazzuni? Are we going to look to bring players in the transfer market? But I think we'll be looking to replace Ball, and depending on the sort of diagnosis of Kamara, which we haven't really heard a huge amount about, have we? It seems one of those ones where maybe they still don't really know what is quite wrong with it because he's had surgery now. Doesn't seem to have worked properly, or there's a further issue. But we're going to need bodies in there. And for me, El Mazzuni, he's doing brilliantly at Leyton Orient, but he's a player that's had a pre-season with us, who knows our system. We know what he's like. He's got another, I think he's got another year and an option after this season, maybe even have 2 years. Well, get him in and get him helping us because he's never let us down.
Exactly right. And if Evans is fit, Morsey Evans is the starting duo anyway, isn't it? So the idea that we'd spend money and put a player on the bench doesn't seem to make much sense to me either.
It's hard to when you know you've got El Mazzuni coming back. You effectively,
and you've got Humphreys as well.
You're either going to loan someone in, or you're going to have to buy someone. And if you buy someone, you've then got 6 midfielders contracted into next season as well. So you're then struggling on that side.
One player who's back from injury and a useful cameo against Peterborough. Could we see Lee start at fullback? I mean, Leaf Day is probably one of the form players in the team right now, but Lee's got a good spring on him, a good in the air, isn't he? I wonder, might he be a centre-back option, Joe?
Could be, yeah. If he was right-footed, maybe even more so. But Burgess seems to have that left centre-back role covered at the moment, doesn't he? But no, I'm sure whatever happens, Greg Lee will play a part in tomorrow's game because he's great at coming on and helping finish those games once you're coming under a bit of pressure at set pieces. But Leif Davis has been superb this year, isn't he, on the ball? So you're going to play him. Corner
danger, yeah. Even it's Callie, who I had a nice chat with after Fleetwood. Shame we didn't.
Reminiscent about the Midlands.
I was so jealous. I was going to say I'm jealous of him jumping on the A14 to go back, but I really wasn't. But yeah, good to meet you finally, Callie, after all these years where we promised we were going to meet at St Andrews and all that kind of stuff. Thanks for joining us tonight. Lee, I hope Walt remembers his cap tomorrow. It's supposed to be rainy and maybe snowy, isn't it, tomorrow? But it was weird last week. I know you guys talked about it on the Flagship. You kind of cap on, cap off. Anyway, we need to get back on the pod and ask him all about it, don't we? Elmes could even come back for the 4 weeks of January and then go back to Orient, says Dan. Yeah, it's an interesting shout there, isn't it? To kind of see how we get through with the injuries, Joe, and then if we need him for longer, then we keep him, don't we?
Yeah, or even signings. If you're trying to get signings over the line, don't make it. But then Orient, are Orient going to wait around for him, or are they just going to, if they lose him, will they need to go and find someone else?
Going to be interesting, isn't it? Well, as always, we'll find out what's going on tomorrow. All we can do is speculate. Do get your predictions and thoughts in for the game in the chat now. We will come back to predictions shortly. That's where we're going to next. Just a few bits and pieces of business to talk about. We are brought to you in partnership with the Greyhound. Great to see so many people in there last weekend, early doors ahead of Peterborough. Always good venue, match day or not. So do head down to the Greyhound. Do join our Telegram group as well, free for a couple of weeks and then a subscription thereafter. But the football chat continues 24/7, 365. Seemingly, it'll be the World Cup chat will be closing down, so only a few more days to take advantage of that. But we really do enjoy keeping the conversation going, and you get to hear bits of wisdom from Joe and Dan as well. Joe, and you're involved in other Telegram groups for other podcasts as well, aren't you? So it's good. It's good to continue the chat, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a really good community. There is a lot of good, intelligent, sensible chat in there.
Attractive,
yeah. There isn't the sort of reactionary. Obviously there's some passions go sometimes, but it's not the constant mind-numbing dullness of the same point being made over and over again, like you get on Twitter sometimes. Like, if, for example, when the manager's out of favour and it's just every comment is just fired in about the same thing. We want this, we want this, we want this. It's like, no, we want to actually talk about it. People give their point of view. People don't agree on everything at all, but there's always some really good chat in there.
Yeah, we've managed to figure out that we can disagree with each other respectfully without it being a problem. So if that's something that you want to see on a more routine basis than Twitter, which frankly is a bit of a dumpster fire right now anyway, then come and join us. We also, spoiler alert for Sunday, Flagship show will be back 8 p.m. as usual with Ben in the host chair with Craig and Dave, I believe. We do have a giveaway, and there may or may not be access to Telegram as part of that Christmas giveaway, but no harm in getting yourself a 2-week free trial, even if you were to win that. So keep your eyes peeled on the Flagship show on Sunday. Merch store is there, but all the details you need, all the fun and games going on in the Blue Monday podcast, head to Blue Monday, itfc.co.uk. Let's do some predictions, Joe. And if I thought about it, I would have got your predictions from the previous week when you were on the show with us, but I've forgotten to do that. So you have to take credit or disavow Seb's predictions. And worth noting, FBL Tractor's first go at things as well. I think is that the right one? I think I've made a mistake right away. I think that's the wrong one. But last week, I think Seb won again. I think Seb did well. So that's all I've got to say about that. Forrest Gump style. I think the host has screwed up there. So apologies for everyone for that. I'm trying to find the right one. Can't do it. Oh yeah, there it is. One sec. Live. Put the lift music on, Joe.
I'm sure everyone's can't wait to see this come up on the screen as well.
It's going to be a total waste of everyone's time.
This will be great for the podcast listeners.
Boom.
As well.
There you go. Right. So Seb won with 2 correct score predictions, including Ipswich Peterborough 2-1, Bristol Rovers Port Vale, FPL Tractor 4 outcomes but no correct scores. So Seb wins the week and continues his mini resurgence. So let's talk about this week. And the games are dropping thick and well. I was going to say thick.
I think there's only one dropped in this league so far.
2.
Isn't there?
2.
Who else has gone now?
Port Vale has gone as well.
Okay.
So I've taken that one out of your predictions roster, Joe, but here we go, and that's the wrong one as well. Bloody hell, Rich. One job he's got to do there, so I'll have to refer to the spreadsheet rather than stick on the screen, which frankly is a bit of a faff anyway. If I can do it seamlessly, I will, but it's another round of pretty uneventful fixtures, Joe. Barnsley, Burton, Bolton, Exeter, Charlton, Bristol, Cheltenham, Lincoln, Derby, Forest Green, Fleetwood, Cambridge. Not particularly exciting. Let's talk about Plymouth, Morecambe. You've gone for a 1-1 draw. You think Plymouth's little hiccup is going to continue, do you?
To be honest, I put what I want to happen rather than what I think will happen sometimes. But Plymouth have not been playing well, and Morecambe don't give out any easy games. I know they're bottom.
Freaky, did it?
It looked like Cambridge were the better team and should have won that. But Morecambe are a tough game. That game is at Plymouth, and I'm sure they'll win it comfortably and probably start a resurgence from there. But I don't know. I just think that Morecambe might give them a couple of bits of trouble there.
And we know Morecambe are tricky opponents as well. FPL Tractor continuing his backing of Plymouth in a very big way. Predicted 4-0 last week. Predicted 4-0 this week. The home form definitely possibly a factor there. Sheffield Wednesday, Oxford. Are you taking a similar line, Joe, with your 1-0 there for Sheffield Wednesday v Oxford?
No, it just sounds like Barry Bannon's out for the game, doesn't it? Oxford are relatively resurgent, aren't they, in the last few weeks? It wasn't that long ago. They were sort of almost down in the relegation zone. And when you look at the table now, they're sort of shot right up there. They're probably one of the form teams in the league. I'd say they'll go there playing very much for a point, as they do when they come to Portman Road every year. So they'll be quite happy with a point.
In the shit housing, won't we? Yeah.
So yeah, I imagine that will just be a game shut down and
keepers with cramp.
They get away with a point. Yeah.
Yep.
I'm sure he's already been practicing laying down on the floor, sort of in training a week. That's all they've been doing at Oxford.
Yeah. No, it's not realistic enough. You've got to scream in agony. Yeah. And let's finally look at us. We're all going for wins. You're pretty confident, Joe, with a 0-2 there. Any not particularly controversial prediction, but you're predicting a couple of goals to the good for that one?
I just think we're a better team than them, and it's either going to go one of two ways, where we just sort of relatively comfortably sort of keep them at arm's length, or it's going to be a bit of a ding-dong battle, and which could go any way. So I'm hoping it's just a comfortable go there, win 2-0, come home, see you later, job done, 3 points, top at Christmas, see you later, League
Happy
One,
days.
Championship, here we come.
Yeah, well, I've gone for a 1-0. I think it might be a little bit squeaky. FPL Tractor also going for a 1-goal margin, but predicting us to concede, which might be interesting. Similar pattern to last week. We shall see. Let's go and see what folk have got for us in the chat. Oh, the first one I could see, Lee's go for a 0-0, Joe. Oh, come on, Lee. Come on. Top of the league.
No.
An icy 2-1, says Charlie D. Score for Bacoda, says Michael, 3-1 win. FPL, 2-1 to the Mighty Blues. There you go. Assuming they remember to turn the undersoil heating on and de-ice the car park for us. 1-1, then we score. So is that 1-1, then we score a 97th minute winner?
2-1 win then.
2-1 win, says Eric. 3-1, says Gary. Ian, there you go. FPL undersoil heating takes 24 hours, as you were saying, Joe. So they probably should just keep it on, really. Seb won. Surely an error. I couldn't believe it. FPL. I'll have to check back the spreadsheet. I kind of feel like putting the wrong images up should suggest to you that I've screwed us up somewhere along the line. So I'll audit the results just in case. And lucky Red Sox will see us home. Yeah, we're in the red and black kit, Joe. Only 2 outings previous. Do you remember what those games were?
Shrewsbury, where we won 3-0, and
Sheffield
can't think of the other. Sheffield Wednesday, where we drew 2-2.
Yep.
So we averaged 2.5 games per goal, 2.5 goals per game in that kit. So it's good.
And 2 points a game as well.
But we wore black socks, didn't we, last time? Both other times we worn it. So this is the first time we were wearing the red socks with it. It's the first time we've got this kit combination: red, black, red.
Oh wow, there you go. Well, thank you, Dan, for pointing that one out, and we'll see how that fares. But, I didn't mean to do that. We'll see how we get on with that next week if I can get the results right and find the right button to press on the pods. Thank you, everyone who's joined us. We've had really positive numbers, so thank you, everyone. And thank you to Stephen on Facebook for the thumbs up. If you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to do that as well, and do subscribe. We really appreciate that. Helps nudge us up all the unimportant algorithms that nerdy people like me care about. Do join us again for the Flagship show on Sunday with Ben, Dave and Craig, and we'll sort out what we're doing ahead of Christmas run of games. Probably less frequent shows, but we certainly will be previewing at least the Oxford and Portsmouth games, I suspect. So do keep a lookout for that. And if you're traveling down to Wycombe, if you manage to successfully dock in a car parking space, do let us know that you're there. Tweet us. We'll retweet anything that you guys send us on the match day experience. And if you're not traveling down and watching legally on iFollow this week, then join us. Why not join us in the Telegram match day chat? If you want to shout out, now is your time to do it. But Joe, do you want to say goodbye and all that kind of fun stuff?
Yep, obviously everyone keep an eye on the Blue Monday account for the International Caps Advent calendar that we're doing each day now.
Yes.
I think it was it Holland's Day? The Netherlands, 16 caps for the Netherlands, or 17 caps between Ardal Muren and Frans Thijssen. So we're down to the last 8 countries now with the most international caps. I'm sure people can guess most of them.
Yes, and 20th will be. Thank you, Joe, for your input, your insights, telling us what PPDA stands for. We'll no doubt hear from you before Christmas. And Lee, no live pod on Christmas Day, but I'm sure there'll be plenty of Blue Monday content out there. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Thank you to Michael. Thank you to Eric, Simon, Lee, for your kind words. And Gary, thank you again for your super chats. We will be back on Sunday, as I mentioned. And do you want to say, come on, you Blues, Joe? Because that's what Seb usually ends the show with.
Come on, you Reds.